नमस्कार आप सभी जनों का। जैसे कि डॉक्टर कुमाश्ता जी ने बताया अबाउट प्रोफेसर फिलिप बेनवा जी के बारे में, मैं तीनों लैंग्वेजेस में बात करूंगी उनसे। अभी उन्होंने बताया आप लोगों को कि he has translated, he has done a comparative study on Valmiki Ramayana and Kritibhas Ramayana, and he has done an extensive study in Sanskrit as well as Bangla. So इससे आप लोगों को ये समझ में आ रहा है कि being a French person, he has done a scholarly study in Sanskrit as well as Bangla. So मैं चाहूँगी हमारी श्रोतागण भी थोड़ा जाने संस्कृत, क्योंकि इतनी डिफ़िकल्ट लैंग्वेज आज हमारे देश में भी जब स्कूल लेवल में पढ़ाई जाती है और बच्चों को चॉइस बिटवीन संस्कृत एंड हिंदी दिया जाता है, they prefer not to study Sanskrit because they find it so difficult. And it is so amazing to know that Professor Phillip Benoit जी ने संस्कृत में अध्ययन किया और उसके बाद उस वाल्मीकि रामायण को अंडरस्टैंड किया, पढ़ा, और उसके बाद कृतिभास रामायण जो बांग्ला में है, बांग्ला की एक्सटेंसिव स्टडी की और फिर उसकी कंपैरेटिव स्टडी की. आई डोंट वांट टू गो मच इनटू डिटेल्स, सो मैं अब हम लोगों की जो इंटरेक्टिव सेशन है मैं उसमें आगे बढ़ना चाहूँगी. सो नमस्कार, আপনার অভিনন্দন আমাদের ওয়ার্ল্ড রামায়ণ কনফারেন্সে. I would like to know that you're born and brought up in Europe, which is predominantly a Catholic. Europe is predominantly by Catholic religion. But how were you exposed to Ramayana?
I think for me it's a very big chance because it's most unlikely for a French like me to be exposed in any way to Ramayana, to such of even not only Ramayana but the Indian culture itself. So how can I explain this chance? It started with my interest for linguistics, and through my interest to linguistics, I was at that time a student in classical Latin and Greek, the European classical languages, and I came to know that Sanskrit, there is a very old language, one of the oldest language in the world, called Sanskrit, and it is possible to study Sanskrit in Paris. So I started studying Sanskrit in Paris, but at the beginning I was curious about linguistics, Sanskrit grammar, Panini, and so on. But very, very soon I realized that by studying Sanskrit, I was able to enter this so vast and so fascinating culture of especially ancient India.
Okay. The following, our audience will be very curious to know a few more things about you. You had two supervisors in your initial study when you were studying in college, I believe. You were supervised by Professor Madeline Biadu, who was a specialist in Mahabharata, and then under Professor Marie Claude Poche, who specialized in Kavya, and supervised you in your research in Ramayana and other Sanskrit works. We would like to know what contribution did they play in your life?
And I am deeply moved today because one of them, Professor Marie-Claude Porcher, who was my guide as a PhD student, died a few days ago. And I would take this opportunity of paying her homage here because she was the one who initially proposed me to work on Ramayana and translate Valmiki Ramayana from Sanskrit into French. And So I had, as you mentioned, these two, they were for me like Vishwamitra. They initiated me to not to weapons and how making war against the Rakshasas, but how to translate from Sanskrit to French and how to study these Indian ancient texts, epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata. Unless they proposed me to attend their classes, to work with them, I could not have undertaken this huge work of translating Ramayana and making a PhD of a comparison between Valmiki Ramayana and Kritibhas Ramayana, that is Bengali medieval Ramayana.
Well, it's very interesting to know you had supervisors, one who motivated you towards Mahabharata, and the other supervisor motivated you towards Ramayana. But what attracted you especially is towards Ramayana than Mahabharata? Why was that?
I was really fascinated by Sanskrit poetics, kavya. And Ramayana is basically known as the Adi Kavya, the first of the poem. So I think it's the reason why I was more attracted for Ramayana than for Mahabharata. And I started working on Ramayana. Another reason is that there are Ramayanas in most of the Indian languages and even outside of India, as we have witnessed with the contributions of our colleagues from Thailand, from Indonesia, etc. And so it was also an opportunity for me to work at the same time on Sanskrit and a language as Bengali, where the Kritibhas Ramayana is a very important part of the Bengali culture.
So when you did the thesis, your thesis was on the comparative study of Valmiki Ramayana and Kritibhas Ramayana. What is the major difference between these two Ramayana? Could you just tell our audience about it?
In a way, Kritibhas, the Bengali author of the 50th century, is very close to Valmiki. Much closer than Tulsidas, for instance. But in another way, he made a lot of additions to Valmiki's poem, and also his poetry is much more simple, much more popular. It sounds very, very sweet in Bengali and very simple, even if it is medieval Bengali. The Bengali of the 21st century, of today, they can easily understand this language, this Bengali. And so it has a particular flavor, at the same time very unsophisticated, very accessible, and very poetical.
So while doing your thesis on Kritibhas Ramayana, you had to study Bangla. And to understand Valmiki Ramayana, you had to study Sanskrit and understand Sanskrit. So did you find these language challenging?
Of course, but as far as Sanskrit is concerned, I think I was well prepared by my studies, my previous studies of Latin and ancient Greek language, which these languages have a lot of similarities with Sanskrit, especially on the grammatical aspect. So even if Sanskrit is a very difficult language, at the same time it's a very rational language, and once you know the rules, it's easy to understand the text you read or you hear. For Bengali, it was easy for me because I used to live in Calcutta, in Bengal, for many years. So I got the opportunity to learn Bengali, not only by reading books, but also by just talking with the people. And but for the medieval, the Kritibhas Ramayana, which is medieval Bengali, at first it was difficult for me because, of course, it was very different from the Bengali as it is spoken, as it is practiced nowadays. But I think this language is so sweet, so attractive, that at the end it was not so difficult, I think.
You have worked on many writers, poets, thinkers of pre-1905 United Bengal, such as Michael Madhusudhan Dutt, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, Aurobindo Ghosh, Rabindranath Tagore, Ramakrishna and Vivekananda. Apni kake nijer kache pan? Who are your favorites and why?
Oh, it's a very difficult question because they are all such great men and in various subjects, various fields of activities. Of course, Michael Madhusudhan Dutt attracted me much because he wrote a new kind of Ramayana in the 19th century, middle of 19th century. But I have a special, I would mention especially Bankim Chandra Chatterjee because for me, he is really the great thinker of not only Bengal but India. And as far as our reflection, our thinkings about Indian nationalism is concerned, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee is definitely very, very important, especially he is a thinker, he was also a novelist, so he wrote many novels. Amongst them, the most significant is probably Anandomot, where there is this Vande Mataram. And of course, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsadev is for me very special. I don't have the words to speak about him because he was such a character, so interesting in many ways. And one can say an illiterate man, but with so much knowledge, so much inspiration. Yeah. And this is very attractive for me, of course, as I think for most of the people here.
Thank you. Since Ramayana is a revered Oriental heritage, I would like to know, can it be confined to any geographical boundaries? I mean, we are having this third International World Ramayana Conference. People from, we are hearing from Malaysia, Indonesia, Nepal, Thailand, Singapore. So can Ramayana be confined to a geographical boundary? What do you feel about it?
No, I certainly not. I hope it's not possible to confine it. And I would say this event of World Ramayana Conference is witnesses of this necessity of having no boundaries with such great text, great poem. And the fact that Ramayana interests many people all over the world and has been translated in so many languages. The translation we have done in French here, maybe you are disappointed, you think, how can such a great book be in such a small aspect? But here, you can believe me, is the totality of Valmiki Ramayana. There are 2,000 pages, about 2,000 pages with a lot of footnotes and explanations. So I think Of course, the story of Ramayana and many Ramayanas, apart from the original Valmiki Ramayana, were born in India. This is definitely an Indian heritage. But Ramayana traveled in a bigger part of Asia, as we could hear today, like Thailand, Indonesia, and other parts of Southeast Asia especially. And Ramayana has been translated in all the major languages in the world, like French, English, Russian, Italian, etc. And many Asiatic languages. So I think no question of boundaries here. Ramayana has become a world heritage. And the question is, what does it mean exactly, this conception of world heritage?
So basically then I can say that you agree with us that Ramayana can not only unite part of Asia, but Ramayana can unite the whole world.
Yes, sure.
Through Ramayana.
Why is it possible? What is it thinkable that Ramayana is able, such a text, such a poem, is able to unite people beyond the religious or ethnic or many differences that we know they exist, they do exist? I think the most, first there is the literary qualities of this text. It's a wonderful story, very fascinating as a story itself, with a lot of events, a lot of suspense, surprises, etc. But on the other hand, I think Ramayana has a lot to teach about moral values, human values, and these values are the same or can be the same all over the world, beyond the differences of religion, of nationality, or whatever you can think.
So I would then say that then Ramayana can offer remedy to the modern day issues. Do you agree with me that through Ramayana, and what do you think about it? Can Ramayana be a remedy to our modern day issues like, the present youth going through depression, breakups? So could you highlight on this?
I think many of the honorable person who made speeches before me today, they said that we have to learn a lot of Ramayana, and Ramayana can give solutions, guide us towards solutions for many problems of our world. If I have time to take 2 or 3 examples, I think one of our major problem all over the world today is the excess of individualism. And specifically, the Ramayana is a story of family values, the importance of family ties, the importance also of friendship. We cannot do anything, we cannot achieve anything alone. We need allies, we need family support. Human being is not, cannot be, or cannot succeed, cannot achieve anything being merely alone. He is a social being. We need, the importance of social ties is very great. And I think this is one of the major lessons of Ramayana, which can be easily understood by people, even people who have no specific knowledge of Indian culture or Indian background or Hinduism.
Finally, my final question to you is, Professor Phillip, What message would you like to give to our youth of today?
It's this question of the excess of individualism is for me a very, very kind of obsession because I think it's the root of many problems in our modern world, not only but all over the world, more or less, maybe a bit more in the Western world, where the importance of religion and moral values has decreased more, but I think it's all over the world. So I think one of the major questions is to how to counterbalance the excess of individualism, and I hope that the teachings of Ramayana, but not only Ramayana, of course, we could also mention Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, and many other texts of the Indian culture. But Ramayana, I think, is one of the most accessible, one of the most, the easiest to understand for non-Hindu people, non-Indian people, because its universal message is, I think, can reach everybody, even people who have no idea of the specificities of the Indian history, Indian culture. Many years ago, about 30 years ago, the Mahabharata was quite popularized in the Western world by Peter Brook and Jean-Claude Carrière, who made a play and also a movie with the Mahabharata. And the impact, the reception of the Western public was very good. So I wish that one day we can have something similar in the same spirit about Ramayana to attract more people to know Ramayana, to read, or at least to listen to the message of Ramayana.
I wish we had more time with you, and would love to have you again in our fourth World Ramayan Conference to go much more in detail. And we're going to hear you, I think, on the 7th or 8th in detail. And thank you so much. খুব ভালো লাগলো আপনার সাথে কথাবার্তা করে।
অনেক ধন্যবাদ, ধন্যবাদ।
There is a demand from the public that a little bit of Bangla should be there. Yeah. And the next.
আপনি আমাদের অডিয়েন্স চাইছেন কি আপনি কিছু বাংলাতে আমাদের অডিয়েন্স চাইছেন আপনি কিছু বাংলাতে ওনাদের বলুন।
আমি জানি না আপনাদের মধ্যে কয়জন বাংলাভাষী আছেন, তবে যারা বাংলাভাষী তাদেরকে অনেক আমার আন্তরিক শুভেচ্ছা জানাচ্ছি। আর হয়তো আপনাদের মধ্যে অনেকজন আছেন যারা বাঙালি না, কিন্তু মোটামুটি বাংলা বুঝতে পারেন। আমি মনে করি বাংলা আমার দ্বিতীয় মাতৃভাষা। আমি অনেক সময় বলি আমার শারীরিক জন্মস্থান ফ্রান্সে, কিন্তু আমার আধ্যাত্মিক জন্মস্থান ভারতে।
आज प्रोफेसर फिलिप बेनॉय जी ने कहा, मैं फिज़िकली मेरा जन्म स्थान भले फ्रांस में हूँ, पर मैं आध्यात्मिक रूप से, शारीरिक रूप मैं बंगाल से जुड़ा हूँ, मैं भारत से जुड़ा हूँ।
Je ne m'attendais pas à voir des locuteurs du français ici. Donc, Bravo, merci. Bon, je dis quelques mots dans ma première langue, voilà, et pour dire que je suis très très fier et très content d'être ici et d'avoir l'occasion de parler du Ramayana. Merci. Merci is Dhanyavad, Dhonnobad.
धन्यवाद धन्यवाद अनेक